Hey everyone, Gabriel Nassif, aka Yellowhat, and today I want to talk about Historic, give you an overview of the format. There was a big weekend of Historic, was a bunch of qualifiers. There was an arena qualifier, there was a more traditional tournament qualifier run through Melee, and it gave us a better idea of what the meta was like. I also want to talk about what could change with Kamigawa. The set's about to go online in a couple days, and I'll go over some of my top picks from the new set for Historic. So while we don't have the list from the Arena MIQ yet, we do have access to the results in the list of the NRG series, which was dominated by Is It Phoenix and Golgari Food. They were the most played deck and also had very good win rates, almost 63% for Golgari Food and over 60% for Is It Phoenix. Out of some of the most played decks, Niv also did well, even though these numbers might be slightly skewed by the players who played these decks. And it was kind of the same thing from what I gathered on Arena. Anyways, the players I follow on Twitter, most of them qualified was Is It Phoenix. So we'll see if Wizards publish the deck list and that's confirmed. But it was big weekend for Phoenix. It had a target on its back. Going to the weekend, it felt a bit like a 4-deck format. Is It Phoenix, Golgari Food, Rakdos Arcanist, as well as a Xurius Control. And these decks were also the foremost played deck in this PTQ. I think the blue-white control deck was supposed to be favored against Food. Food was supposed to be favored against Phoenix. And Phoenix was supposed to be favored against Xurius Control. Rakdos Arcanist was supposed to be decent against Phoenix and okay against Control, but really bad against Golgari Food. So it was like somewhat of a rock, paper, scissors, but a pretty balanced one. And I'm sure you could find players that could argue that, maybe Phoenix is not that bad against Food, or Food, Food is not that bad against blue-white control, etc. The PTQ was won by Arya, aka Hawkpox. She's been crushing all year. You could argue that, okay, she won with Golgari Food, but I'm guessing she had probably just as good as a chance if she had showed up with Phoenix. Niv was played by Tristan, who's another really good grinder. He got a list from someone just before the tournament and almost took down the whole thing. It was only one slot, and you see the top 8 is, besides that Niv deck, the rest of the top 8 is all Is It Phoenix and Golgari or John Food. So not the widest, I guess not the most diverse metagame as far as top deck goes. Let's take a look at Arya's deck. A lot of pretty standard choices, but also a few surprise. There's a Rampage of the Clans in the main deck. That card can be really good in some matchups. You can make creatures with your own permanents. It's kind of a clutch card in a matchup like Enchantress. Can maybe get you out of a jam in the mirror match. She had one in the main as well as one in the sideboard, and she decided to play copies of Lantern as well as Cursebound Witch over maybe Shambling Swarm, which was a card that saw a decent amount of play. She also did not have Village Rites, which is kind of a not notable as absent card. The Cursebound Witch actually won her the very last game of the tournament when she cast Cruel Reality against Niv. So that was pretty cool. And the sideboard is nothing too special. Second Rampage, some spot removal for an permanent, Thoughtseize, Graveyard Hate, Liberator, which could be a really obnoxious card. I've definitely lost games single-handedly to a turn 2 Liberator with a deck like Enchantress or other decks. So yeah, that's what most of the food lists look like. I know that there's also people playing with Outlurs and playing more expensive cards like Binding, I got paired against someone who had Scatterfang on the ladder. I think that card's called the kind of general squirrel, 3-mana squirrel. There's also a version that played the Tusk that you can I forget the ability. You put it on a creature and then it destroys lands and stuff. So yeah, some variants of black green food. As far as people in the MIQ, I didn't see a ton of people tweet that they got there was black green food. As I said, most of the celebratory tweet I saw were players playing Phoenix. You had Carl Sarap, aka Terry Bad. You had Will Pulliam, who's been a playtesting teammate of mine now for a while. He actually qualified for day 2 was Ragdos and played Ragdos in another tournament on day 1, but then decided the deck didn't feel good and switched to Phoenix on day 2, qualified with Phoenix. So that's either his list or Terry Bad's list, but nothing too special. Maybe four Stormwing entity is something that stands out in this specific list, but besides that, nothing too special. The mana base is also interesting. I kind of like Sulfurful mana base, but I'm also not a super big Phoenix expert, and it seems the consensus is to not play Sulfurful, to play very few basics, and to play 4 Stormcarved Coast. The sideboard has some of the usual suspects. Zvielun, which is a card that some players already had in the last set championship in their sideboard. Also has Alpine Moon for the Lotus field deck. And, kind of other cards you might expect out of Phoenix deck. Here's a quick look at the Nib deck. Tristan played to the 2nd place finish in the PTQ. It actually had Break Expectations as a discard spell. I tried that card, I didn't love it. But the rest of the deck, I think, is what he played. Kroxa kind of looks a bit out of place, maybe. The mana cost could be rough in a 5-color deck, but the games go long, and that card was pretty strong for me in the games I've played. You've also got Celestis to power it out, which is not totally stuck. So definitely some interesting card choices in this deck. Kavu's been one of the most recent add, and that card's really taken the deck to the next level. I'm not sure you could call Nif tier 1, but Kavu was really great addition, just proactive threat, and I think that the deck gained a lot from it. I'm not sure if a ton of people qualified was blue-white Lotus Field, but that was the deck I played the most before the weekend. I was kind of trying to figure out what was good, and I was impressed playing against that deck. I decided to try it out for myself, and I really liked it. I thought Strict Proctor plus Lotus Field was pretty oppressive, just really good against everyone. You also got a few free wins just casting Proctor on turn 2 against the white-green creature decks. And I was impressed by Divine Purge as well. Decent in the meta. It also combos nicely with Fateful Absence because you give them the clue, but then it gets exiled by the Purge, and they don't have time to sack it. I was overall just impressed with the deck. I felt like it was powerful, and it gave you that little broken factor that traditional blue-white control does not have. I tried the new Teferi as well as the rebalanced Teferi Time Raveler rebalance. I think that card's decent. It's not as good as it used to be, obviously, but I think it's good enough to play a few copies here and there. So that would have been my personal choice going into the weekend. And I think that deck might still be decent. I was impressed. I was not a huge fan of traditional blue-white control, but I quite like this version. Another deck I wanted to talk about is green-white Enchantress. There's 2 players in my Twitch chat that told me they made day 2 as a deck. Unfortunately, they came up a little bit short on day 2. They didn't have exactly similar versions. One was playing 9 Life Solemnity in the main, another one was playing it just in the sideboard. But I played with Enchantress a bit. I thought it was a pretty cool deck. I was impressed. It's the kind of deck that shines when people don't expect it. But seeing Arya's food list was 1 Rampage to cleanse in the main and 1 in the sideboard is a little scary, because what happened to me on the ladder was that they just end of turn Rampage to clan, untap, cast Meat Hook Massacre, and your whole board is gone. I think you can potentially play around that by getting so far ahead and making sure you don't overcommit, that you can maybe rebuild after that combination. You can also try and dodge it or stop it was maybe Gideon's intervention. But yeah, that deck was sweet. I think it's pretty powerful. It potentially gets a few new cards with Kamigawa, but I'm not sure that'll necessarily be enough, or if these cards will even make the cut. The last deck I wanted to showcase today is Blue-Eyed Affinity. It's a really fun and cool deck I've played a lot. I don't think it's quite tier 1, but it potentially gets a lot of new cards out of Kamigawa, and that'll kind of, segue us into the new sets. So I'm definitely really excited to try new versions of this deck. It's a deck that relies on a bunch of cheap artifact, especially Portable Hole and Esper Sentinel, to power out Big Nettle Cyst and cast Dot Monitor for cheap. And yeah, I would have not played it in the PTQ. It's not especially good against Divine Purge. That card can be tough for you. Narset can also be tough for you. So if you expect a lot of blue-white control, it might not be the best choice. But I thought that deck was kind of decent. Once again, maybe Rampage the Clan into Meathook Massacre might be a problem, even though this deck at least has access to Counterspell. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that deck real quick. I'll put links to these deck lists in the description below, so make it easy for you to maybe explore these decks for Arena. And yeah, I guess it's time to take a look at what I think might have an impact out of the new set and how things might change a bit in Historic. All right, so top 5 might be a bit loose, but it's kind of a top 5. You'll see. So in 5th, I have Spirited Companion, 1/1 for white and 1. Enchantment creature dog. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. Might be a bit of wishful thinking, but that card might have potential was Soul Herder, Yorion, or maybe even an Enchantress decks. So it might be the missing piece for some of these decks. Historic is a format where Wool of Omens is not legal. You got Wool of Blossoms, you got maybe Omen of the Sea, but you don't have a white 2-mana cantrip creature. So who knows? Maybe Spirited Companion will help there. Enigmatic Incarnation is also a deck that has had decent results here and there. Probably nowhere near tier 1, but maybe Spirit Companion can fill in the gap and help these decks out. So I've got it at number 5. At number 4, I have Hidetsugu Consumes All. Pretty straightforward sideboard hate card. I don't think it's quite good enough for main deck, maybe a little too narrow, but it does seem like it should help a deck like Dragdos deal with green-black food a lot, as well as potentially be decent against Phoenix or in a few other matchups. I'm not sure it will be quite good enough, but it definitely seems like it has potential and it could turn things around and really hurt the green-black food deck that's been dominant in Historic for a while now. So at number 3 for most impactful card in Historic out of Kamigawa, I have the land cycle of the legendary lands that tap for colored mana, come into play untapped, and have a channel ability. While I don't think they'll be as good or as impactful in Historic as they might be in Modern, where you have a card like Friend and 6 to get them back, I do believe that they will see probably play in most decks as a one-of, and you'll see a lot of them. They're not going to be format warping or breaking or not going to solve all your issues, but the power level of Kamigawa is not insane either. They've been, I think, doing a good job of making good fun sets without having broken cards in them. So there's not going to be, it's unlikely there's a lot of cards that end up having a real impact on Historic, because Historic's not on the same power level that Modern, but it is a pretty powerful format. So yeah, I have the land cycle at number 3. I'm not sure which one will be the best specifically in Historic. Maybe just the red one, the one that makes you 2/1/1 haste, just pretty straightforward and the easiest to use. All right, number 2, I've got Lion Sash, the new white Scavenging Ooze. I might be a little biased because I just did a set review with Scanister on Modern, and we both had that card pretty high as one of the best cards in the set for Modern. In Modern, you can tutor for it was Stoneforge Mystic, and exiling the graveyard is super relevant, but exiling the graveyard is really relevant in Historic 2. The two best decks are arguably Phoenix and Green-Black Food. That card is just maybe a little... The base stat, the 1/1 base stat is not great, but I could see it have an impact. Ooze is one of the best cards you can play out of a green creature deck. So the Lion Sash might be good. It might be good specifically in that blue-white artifact deck. It might not. It might be another bias of mine. I'm really excited to see how much of an upgrade the blue-white artifact decks get. But yeah, maybe just a hate bear you find in a lot of decks. It's also a permanent you can bring back with Lotus. You've got maybe a deck like white-black Death Shadow, white-black aggro that was decent before. Maybe mono-white makes a comeback, and the Lion Sash is a big part of it. Yeah, top 5. I kind of tried to rank them, but I might be way off. I might be missing. If you thought I missed anything, by the way, feel free to leave a comment. Tell me if you agree, disagree. If I totally missed one of the cards that might shake up Historic, let me know. All right, since I said this was a really loose top 5, at number 1, I have a combination of 3 cards. I've got Moonsnare Prototype, I've got Mindling Mech, and I've got the new Tezzeret Planeswalkers. I'm guessing you see a theme there, the artifacts. I could have even grouped up Lion Sash with it, but I feel like Lion Sash is maybe playable in a bunch of different archetypes. I'm basically banking on the fact that all these artifacts are going to take the blue-white affinity deck to the next level. The problem is you've got cards like Divine Purge, you've got cards like Rampage the Clan, so that might be a little ambitious, but, you know, I'll put myself out there. I'll probably end up being wrong, but who cares? I want to mention that card Moonsnare Prototype, kind of a new Springleaf Drum, and I think relevant channel ability. It's not card disadvantage. You do get a 1/1. You do get to boost out cards early in the game, and Drum is not legal in Historic, so we'll see. The mana might be a little tricky getting on tap blue and on tap white early in the game when you're also trying to play a bunch of artifact lands, and colorless land is not super easy. But you don't have Urza Saga in Historic, so maybe you have more room for more colored mana. Second card I mentioned is Mindling Mech. It has a lot of text, but basically for 3 mana, you get a 4/3 flying vehicle that crews for 1. And when you crew it, it gains the abilities of the creatures you crew it with, non-legendary creatures. So in practice, what does that mean? It means that if you crew it with an Esper Sentinel, your opponent has to pay 4 more for their spells, plus the 1 for Esper Sentinel, so you can potentially draw 2 cards. You can imagine a scenario where you create on your turn was a creature, and then in their upkeep, you create again with Esper Sentinel. If you crew it with Ingenious Smith, it means that it gets a +1/+1 counter if you play an artifact after crewing it. And one last synergy, I guess obvious synergy or potential synergy, is if you crew it with a Karn token from Sign of Urza, it gets +1/+1 for each artifact you have, so potentially attack for 8-10 damage as early as turn 4. I think that card has potential. It hits hard. It has some cool synergies with cards that are good. It's not like, oh, obscure synergies have to play these really bad creatures. It's Esper Sentinel and Ingenious Smith that you already want to play. So we'll see if that actually works out, if it's actually legit, or if it's a little too gimmicky. The last card I wanted to talk about is the new Tezzeret. For 4 mana, you get a Planeswalker with 4 royalty, +1, draw some cards, -2, turns an artifact into a 4/4 permanently, and a nice -6 emblem that gets you more card advantage. It also has a really cool passive. The first activated ability of an artifact you activate each turn costs 2 less to activate, meaning it's just once. It's not once per artifact, etc. So just like once a turn, but it does work on your opponent's turn. So you can maybe sack a clue on their turn, use a Maze Mind Tome. Other obvious abilities are Nettle Cyst and Shadow Spear equipment cost. Not a ton, but if you can start abusing the passive, I think that card can be quite strong. I think that without the passive, it's okay. Turning your Esper Sentinel into 4/4 can be really strong, and it goes up to 5 the turn it comes into play. So that card might see play. I tried Karn's Sign of Urza in the Blue-White Artifact deck. It was fine, but not great. This card might be a bit better. Unlike Modern, it doesn't have to compete with Urza, the just super busted 1/4 creature. So that card, I'm definitely going to try it out, and I would be surprised if it's quite good. So there you have it, an overlook at Historic and at some of the cards that might have an impact out of Kamigawa. Is it going to be enough to shake up things? Is my dear Blue-White Artifact deck gonna rise to tier 1? Is the Spirited Companion gonna help a lot of these like tier 2, tier 3 decks get to the next level? Is a card like Hidetsugu Consumes All gonna help the Ragless deck or the Nib decks or any other red-black decks keep green-black food in check? I guess we'll have to see, but I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take care.